I took it very, very seriously. I didn't want to let people down. I had taken their money in good faith. I was willing to kill myself to deliver a result for that business. And yeah, it was some of the most challenging times of my life, for sure.
This episode of The Growth Manifesto is with Taryn Williams. She's the founder of Wink Models, The Right Fit, the influencer agency, and recently Gifted. In this episode, we talk about the journey of entrepreneurship, her experiences along the way, from starting a service-based business into launching a software app, in raising funds, in raising capital, subsequently exiting, and then starting another agency, another software app. Hey, Taryn, how's it going?
I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. The weather is pretty miserable up in the Gold Coast. How's it in Sydney?
It is absolutely miserable. And I just got back from 6 weeks in Europe yesterday, and this was not what I signed up for at all.
Yeah. So, how was Europe? Was it good?
It was amazing. It was really beautiful. It's always nice to go away, get a bit of perspective. Actually, every time I come back to Australia, I realize how lucky, apart from today, we are so lucky here. We really do have amazing businesses, amazing business opportunities, amazing culture, amazing food, amazing landscape. Like, we are so blessed.
Yeah, for sure. I was in Europe a couple of weeks ago as well. I went to Spain, Amsterdam, just for like a wedding. It was actually quite kind of cold in Amsterdam and Paris, but it was quite hot in Spain. So anyway, but yeah, I always love coming back to Australia. It's always really nice here. And obviously I grew up here and so did you. But let's talk about you, because you've had such an interesting entrepreneurial path, we'll call it, right? You started off as a model and then you started a modeling agency, then software companies and different stuff like that. So I figured let's start with that, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of learnings along the way. But how did you get started like in entrepreneurship, right? Because I think this is always the hardest part for people, especially the people that are just starting out. It's that start. Yes. How did you get started?
And look, I think because I started so long ago, I didn't realize how different it was to having a traditional sort of career path, 9 to 5. Because I'd been self-employed and working as a model, where obviously you don't have that consistent source of income and you're not going to the same place every day, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I think starting my own business didn't seem such a stretch from that. And probably when I reflect on it, I was surrounded by a lot of very entrepreneurial people it was sort of back in the day before people talked about entrepreneurship, entrepreneurialism. It was very much sort of small business owners or people who were, creative directors or photographers or, owned restaurants in the hospitality space or owned advertising agencies and production companies. So I think because I was surrounded by all of these people kind of doing their own thing, and because I'd not come from a traditional sort of 9 to 5 path, I didn't really realize that going in and starting your own company was really probably something quite different. And especially doing it, I was 21 when I started the Wink Models, the modeling agency. So doing it so young, I think was, probably a little bit different now that I reflect on it.
I guess this is the part that kind of happens with lots of entrepreneurs, right? Is that they have an idea, they think, well, why hasn't this already been done? I can do it. And everyone says, are you sure you can do it? You're like, yep, I'm overconfident. I don't know what's ahead, but I think I can do it, right?
The blissful naivety of youth. You're like, I can do that.
And then you start, and then you find all the challenges. And so what were some of the things that you learned pretty quickly in the beginning, especially and this is like some time ago, but I'm sure it's helped kind of mold you to who you are. So it's probably still there, but
absolutely.
Yes. What were some of the things that you were not aware of that you quickly had to become aware of?
Firstly, so many things. I started Wink Models on the premise that we would pay all of our models within 7 days, irrespective of when we got paid by clients, because I thought, gosh, it's ridiculous that models were waiting 60 or 90 days to get paid. And I'm going to start my own agency. I'm going to treat everyone with decency and respect. I'm going to really, be amazing for both our talent and our clients. And I'm going to grow a business that way. Which is all very well and good, but I didn't know anything about managing cash flow. So I'd made this commitment to paying all of our models within 7 days. Our clients were still paying us on 60 or 90-day payment terms. So the first 12 months of the business were really, really hard. I didn't take any external investment. I just had to reinvest every single dollar back into the business and absolutely bust my gut to make sure that we could afford to honor those terms to our talent. And look, the great thing is whilst I didn't set out for this to be the reasons, our models were so loyal and went so above and beyond because they so appreciated what we were doing for them as an agency. So it meant that, when we had clients calling and saying, oh my God, we've just had this last minute thing come in. Can you help with someone for today? We had models who would turn around and go like, yeah, absolutely. We'll drop everything and we'll be there for you. So look, managing cash flow was a real baptism by fire. Learned that the hard way. And then I think also, when you start a business, you start it because usually you're really passionate about something and you're really good at a particular thing and you've got deep domain expertise maybe, but you're not necessarily great at all of the other elements of the business. But I had this real fear that if I spent additional cash on things, like bookkeeping or whatever it might be, that I, wasn't going to be able to afford to meet these terms that we'd committed to our talent. And I didn't really realize that, I was actually reinvesting in the business for growth and that I was freeing my time up to do the things that I should be best spent doing, like, winning new business and servicing our models and onboarding more models. So I spent a lot of time trying to touch and do every single element of the business, which really prevented us from scaling. So I think learning how to delegate, learning that investing in external resources or more headcount, whatever it might be, yes, there's a financial cost to that, but the opportunity cost is taking your time away from the things that you're really good at.
And I think what's difficult about that is that, you're starting off and, so you were 21 and I think I started my first business around the same age as well. And
crazy.
It's funny how much you are so overconfident about kind of your abilities, and then how harsh the reality of the world is and how fast that you need to learn. So how did you learn so quickly? Because, most people just fail, right? Like I think like the stats is, so 4 out of 5 businesses are failing the first year and then the next 5 years after that and so on. So those chances of success are very low. So how did you figure that out like at that kind of time?
I think there's 2 things. One, I was really doggedly determined. Like I talk to our team about it still now. I remember sitting up at like midnight, 1 a.m., just going through Google, like the first 20, 30, 40 pages of Googling like photographers in Sydney, production companies in Melbourne, and literally cold calling and cold emailing and putting together pitch decks and just like, I was doggedly determined not to fail. I really put in crazy hours, crazy amounts of effort to make sure, I don't think I took a holiday or took a day off or took sick leave for, 5, 6 years. I was really committed to that business. And then I think without knowing it, I had really amazing people around me and amazing mentors. I just met a lot of people through my journey. And anytime I met someone who I felt like I could learn from, I was really proactive in reaching out and saying, hey, I'd love to pick your brains on, how you built a great company culture or how you, scaled into a new state or what I should think about around these kind of things. And I would come armed with a very clear agenda of things that I wanted to go through. And then I would make sure I would always close the loop with them and say, thanks for your recommendations. I've gone out and bought these 3 books you recommended. I've done these 2 courses. I've X, Y, and Z. Would it be okay if we had a coffee again in 3 months' time? And so I didn't sort of realize at the time that was sort of mentoring. And I was just, again, probably annoyingly determined to get in front of these people and learn as much as I could. And then I went out and did every single course under the sun, there's great courses at General Assembly. There was so many things that I needed to learn. And I was really willing to put my hand up and ask for help and say, like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to get public liability insurance. Where's the best place to go and get that? Who's got a good mortgage broker? So there was none of that like fake it till you make it kind of thing going on.
So what do you say about the statement that if you're an entrepreneur, you can't help but do it anyway, right? Like you can't really, like it's hard to teach entrepreneurship because entrepreneurship is not the skills. It's that kind of, it's the dogged hunger that you just can't help it anyway. And your ego is secondary to your, I guess, the desire to just achieve something, right? Because like, it sounds like exactly, it's the same as every entrepreneur that I know. It's the same thing I did. Like, it's just that hunger where you can't help but do it anyway. Like I'd rather stay awake at night and be emailing and, just doing all my outreach, understanding how insurance works, than going to sleep or watching Netflix or whatever it was at the time, right? Yes.
Yeah.
So in terms of entrepreneurship, is that yes, how would you Think about that.
Agree with you. And I've had so many conversations over the years about like, are entrepreneurs born or made? Because I think inherently the entrepreneurs I know, and when I speak for myself, we have such high risk appetites. We're so tenacious, that grit and the ability to get through adversity and yes, that, you're going to get knocked down 9 times out of 10, but you continue getting back up. So I think there's all of these inherent inbuilt characteristics and traits that are common in entrepreneurs. And I look at exactly what you were just saying before. I look at myself now and sometimes you just can't not do it. I see so many business opportunities or ideas. I always joke that I've got a bottom drawer of ideas because, ideas are not the hard part. It's the execution that's the hard part. But, I think entrepreneurs see ideas and business opportunities in everything and just want to go and like, I could improve that. There's a better way of doing that. I could streamline that process. So I do think that there's some common elements in entrepreneurs and ones that are probably going to increase your likelihood of success, like that sort of tenacity and grit and determination. So I don't know that it's a skill that can be taught. I think that there's certainly probably some processes of thinking and how you think about innovation and disruption and that can maybe be taught. But I don't know I think that sort of appetite for risk and inherent sort of personality profiles you either have or don't.
Yeah, because I think it is that level where it is so hard and it's so hard for so long.
Oh, yeah.
You have to really want it super badly. And then and then the reality is going to kind of hit you that like, wow, I am not as good as what I thought I was, right? And then there's the other component of speed, right? Because it's fine to fail, but like it's better if you do it quickly, because if you do it quickly, at least that you learn quicker. When you learn quicker, then that's where kind of the innovation happens. And then all you need is like a couple things to start to work, and then it can go, right? But it's that first part of like, that's not working, that's not working, that's not working, and then it starts working, right? And so is that something which you've seen across all of your businesses? And obviously like it's probably gotten a bit easier, like the more successes, but is that still something that you have?
Yeah, I think the only thing that gets easier, I always think every time I start another business, I'm like, this one's going to be easy. It gets easier only in the sense that, you have better connections. You know that the basic things that you need to do. I think the only thing that gets easier is you identify quicker what's going to work and what's not, or when to pivot, or, when to walk away from something. I think in my first business, you try a lot of things, and it takes a lot longer to recognize which of those things are moving the needle. And I think the more businesses I've had, the more it's sort of easier to identify, we've got a sign of product market fit here. We need to go deep on this particular thing. So I think that gets easier. And I think now I'm probably better at surrounding myself with good people and knowing who to have in what kind of roles. I think, you sort of experiment with a couple of different org charts or structures. And I think I also sort of know now where my strengths and weaknesses are, and going really deep on particular sort of verticals and skills, as opposed to wanting to be a generalist. I'm not a generalist. I'm not a CEO. Like that's not my skill set, and it's not what I enjoy.
So what is your skill set?
I think I've got a really—
you had to define this right now.
sort of domain expertise. So look, I think obviously anything to do with talent, social media, content creation, digital innovation, technology, I would say marketplaces and SaaS businesses are kind of my sweet spot. So that's probably where I see my skill set and where I most enjoy playing. And I think there's also probably an age you get to and a level of experience where you just go, look, I could be really, really great at these other parts of the business, but does it set my soul on fire and is it the best use of my time? Maybe not.
And so for Wink Models,
yes.
So that was an agency, or was that a software company?
No, so that's
right? That was an actual agency, full service agency. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to confirm that, right? Because then you changed the business model to start a software company, right? So what was that like, shifting from a service kind of model to a software model? Because I'm across the details, but I just want to know just kind of how you found that transition.
Absolutely. So at Wink, we were managing about 650 models, which, as you can imagine, was like unsustainable in a traditional— this is, 16 years ago. So it was like spreadsheets, Word documents, pen and paper, very, very manual. I don't even think we had Xero back in the day. It was probably MYOB. So it was a really painful process. And it was just as apps were kind of cool. And I was like, I'm going to build an app for this business. And I'm going to, check our model's availability using an app. And they can just say, yes, I'm available for that casting. And then it will schedule them into a shift and it can manage payroll and, it's a small little business idea. So I went and scoped it with an agency and was like, this is what I want to build. And I built this sort of end-to-end tech product. It was my first foray into tech, obviously, and built this bigger than Ben-Hur internal system, Wink Central. The business still uses it today. And it completely transformed the business. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. I mean, it was so painful. You can imagine, I knew absolutely nothing about building an MVP. I had no idea about what the difference between a front-end and back-end developer was, but I persisted through it. I always say it was like a really expensive, painful MBA. Came out the other side and I was like, right, I love building things in technology. I love solving business problems using tech. Wow, this completely it just reduced the key man dependency in the business. There was so many pain points that transformed. I got to the end of that build and I was like, what I should have done was built this as a agnostic platform that any modeling agency or acting agency or talent agency could use, and that clients could just use directly and bypass an agency. And it was sort of around the time that Freelancer was starting and Airtasker, and I was like, I could have built a marketplace. And so I went to see some of our clients and I was like, look, don't worry about offending me, but if you had the option of not using a talent agency and you could just go direct through a platform like an Airtasker or a Freelancer and find a model or a makeup artist, is that something you would do? Or would you be too concerned? And so I had a lot of sort of conversations with clients about it. And they were like, yeah, look, it's definitely something we would try and love the idea and could see where you're going with it. So that was where the idea for the Right Fit came from, which was my second business, which was a two-sided marketplace for creative talent. So I sort of had all of the key learnings from building this internal tool at Wink. And I went away and this time I knew kind of what to do. So I was like, okay, MVP, I knew the team I needed, mapped out all the sort of wireframes. What are the key features? What's the bare minimum we can get away with to launch this thing? Built a really quick and dirty MVP and got a proof of concept, could see that there was interest from both sides of the marketplace, and then went, right, we're going to build this out. And we raised capital probably 6 months after that.
So you started by actually talking to the customers first. Well, actually, you started by you built something to solve an issue internally, and then you thought, all right, so this is potentially software. And then you went out and you spoke to the customers first, and then you built it after confirming that there were going to be customers for it.
Yes. And it was the best thing I did because, what I could have done was build the product and gone, well, I think there's a need, and then turn around and find out, actually, no, our customers just really love their agency relationships, and they're obviously using a marketplace. The key sort of selling points were that it's faster and it's cheaper. But what you lose in that transaction is, the expertise of having someone help you and guide you through the process. The onus is on you to do the work, the contacting back and forth with models. And so I really needed to prove that out and make sure that it was genuinely something that they were willing to do and that there was enough cost sensitivity in the market for that to be the case. So having that understanding. And then what I found through that process is that so many of those people were then really deeply bought into the success of the platform. And they were so involved and were like, hey, I've got this idea. What if you added this? Or I'd love this feature. Or could you do this? And so they became sort of like both our beta testers and kind of our brand advocates and champions over time as well.
So how hard was it, I guess, at that point, in terms of the raising of capital? Because that would have been the first time, because the first one was kind of self-funded, organic growth. It's all about the grind. The second one, I'm getting capital for speed.
Yeah.
The first part is actually how hard was it in terms of the raise? And the second part is how was the experience then of having someone else's money and the speed, the timeline expectations? If you could talk about that, because that's a shift and a half, right? Compared to
absolutely.
I get a model, I have staff, and they're going to make it happen. I have to make payroll, right? You know what I mean? It's a bit different.
Completely different journey. And I think I was so naive, again, in how different the two things were. So I was like, I've run a successful business before. I know how to do this. I can manage a P&L. I can run a great team. I can build company culture, blah, blah. running a tech business and a fast growth tech business is so different. So I bootstrapped probably the first like $500,000 of the business. And I'd actually gone to see a few people purely to get some advice and say, look, the business seems to be really like, I think I've got some product market fit here. We're seeing really good growth, but I still am working full time in both businesses. I'm, I'm CEO of the modeling agency, trying to run this thing. At what point would you recommend stepping full time into a pursuit like this? Or is it better to bring in someone else to run that business? What would it look like? Do I close Wink Models? Do I sell it? I was under the impression it could just not run without me. I had such, this idea that there was key man dependency in it. Such a shock when they were totally fine. And so I went to see a few mentors and I was like, hey, how would you recommend I think about this and approach this? And one of those people was a venture capitalist and said, I think this is a really good idea. And it's got all of the sort of markings and things that we would look for. We would be happy to invest if that's a path that you would be interested in going down. And I was like, oh God, that was sort of not something I was expecting and I hadn't really thought about yet. And I was like, okay, well, really, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it well. I want to do it with the best partners. And yes, I am going to have to expedite the growth. We could have continued to bootstrap it, but it just would have really hamstrung the business. And I knew that, especially with marketplaces, it's like a winner takes most approach. Like we had to go out there and we had to acquire customers and talent really, really quickly. So I came back to the team and I was like, I think we should do this. I think we should go down this path and raise capital. So then it was an absolute baptism by fire of learning, what does that mean? What are the right terms? Who do we want to invest with? What kind of partners do I want? How much equity are we willing to give up? And so that was a completely all-consuming, really, really intense period. And, grappling with the idea that all of a sudden, I was going to go from being this completely autonomous business owner who could do what they wanted, grow the business how I wanted and completely organically, to having a very formal board, serious investors who had, put decent amount of money into this business and obviously had expectations. And so it was a really different, the upsides are that obviously you've got cash available to make fantastic hires, test things that you wouldn't, be able to test without that kind of capital available, and people who are deeply invested in your success and really want to help. And who have obviously just been there, done that. They've got the war scars. They know this, they can predict what's going to happen far faster than you can. So there's a lot of benefits. Obviously, there's downsides as well. You don't get that full autonomy to make the decisions that you want to make. You are completely accountable to a board. And so that means sometimes I look back on that journey. I think there was times when we were running before we could walk. We were so focused on hitting these monthly targets and, we've got to, we presented this model, we've got to get here. And so we were probably making short-term decisions at the expense of the long-term, best interests of the company. So there was just a lot of learning, I think, along the way on, what's better.
How did you find, because if you were to bootstrap something, it's all your money, up to you. If you want it to be longer, it can be longer. If you make a decision, it's different. Now you have some funding and now you have to get some growth, was it challenging in the beginning to start with lots of money and spend it smartly compared to the grind? You know what I mean? Where it's you're kind of used to the grind, but now you've got a big chunk of money and some goals and you have to win immediately. And maybe you can make a mistake, but a much smaller kind of leeway of success. Yeah. So how did you find, I guess, the shift into this has to go in the next, I'd say, 6 to 9 months or something like that?
Yeah. It was so challenging for me. I had come from, obviously running a business that had always been cash flow positive. I'd been super conservative in how I'd run that business. I watched every single dollar and cent, and I had to manage the cash flow and grow it sustainably, to coming into a venture funded business that had high growth targets and where you don't have proven repeatable, it's so early. So it's not like, put another $10,000 into this marketing channel and you're going to get $20,000 back. It's like you're experimenting across so many different things and you're trying to guess the impact of, okay, if I bring in a full-time product manager, what sort of impact is that going to have on the velocity of our roadmap? And is that going to increase the conversion rate? And so it's a lot of guesswork. You've got so many different initiatives from both like a product perspective, a marketing perspective, a sales perspective going on at the same time. And one of the things that I learned, I think, especially in a marketplace business, is there's no silver bullet. It's not like one of those things is going to work. Like if I just do really high performance Facebook ads that's going to drive our business, it's kind of a lot of little tiny paper cuts across the board, improving the on-site experience by 2%, reducing the friction in the sign-up flow by 5%. Cumulatively, the impact of all of those things is what, makes the business grow. But it's a lot of tough experimentation. And there was months where we were burning like, $100,000, and I'd be like sick with anxiety because you're like, oh my God, we've got so much money going out the door. We've got a finite period of time to prove this business out. I'm solely accountable, which is not true. And one of the things I had to learn was that, your team buy into this journey. They believe in you, they believe in the business, and it's not solely on you to deliver this. But I think, there's that.
But it kind of is. Sorry, but it kind of is. It is kind of
complex as well as an entrepreneur. I think you're like, oh my God, this is all on me. I have to do it all. And so, the anxiety of going, oh my God, I've got to get this right. And I took it very, very seriously. I didn't want to let people down. I had, taken their money in good faith. I was willing to kill myself to deliver a result for that business. And yeah, it was some of the most challenging times of my life for sure.
And I mean, you had to quickly learn how to scale up a software company, which is very, very different to a service-based business, right? Completely different. Or the metrics are different, or the things are different, how you approach it different, acquisitions different, everything is different. Yeah.
Totally.
How important was the board and the VC in terms of that journey?
Really important. Absolutely. I was so lucky that I had an amazing mentor who then became the chairman of my board, who had been an American entrepreneur, had 4 or 5 different tech companies. He'd had 2 successful exits under his belt, and was just so formative in helping me understand the difference and how to grow a really high performance software and engineering team. What that should look like in terms of development cadence and all of those things. And just understanding, working through some of those, a basic CAC to LTV ratio, some of the things that in a traditional sort of agency business, we just weren't concerned about. It was a very, very different business. So having the right board and a board and the board changed over time. That business was nearly 7.5 years old when I sold it. So the board changed over time as well, as you'd have board members leave, new people join, new investors come on board that would get a board seat. So getting that dynamic right and the sort of skills matrix and making it an effective board is really challenging, and challenging on top of the fact that you're giving everything that you have to the day-to-day operations of the business. And then you've got to take a step back and go, okay, now I need to put, that 30,000 foot view on and engage with my board. It's a completely different mindset to being in the minutiae day to day.
So you had that, and you still had Wink Models too at the same time?
I did.
And then you started some other agency called The Influencers as well. Is that right? So you just threw one else. So you just threw another one in there?
Yeah. So then I started the Influencers agency. And yeah, I could see a gap in the market there was influencer agencies who were representing influencers, but there was no one that was sort of platform agnostic or agency agnostic. So we would purely work for a brand. So brands like HelloFresh or Lululemon would engage us and then go, okay, we've got $100,000 to do an influencer marketing campaign. What should we do and who should we do it with? And we would then work with all of the different platforms, all of the different agencies, put together the best brief for them and help them execute that. So yeah, started that as well. And then I sold both of the Right Fit and the Influencers agency nearly 18 months ago now.
Wow. Yeah, and let's talk about that, because what is the journey in terms of exiting a company? Because obviously it takes longer than what you think, first of all, but then also it still needs to operate. So you can't just be like, I'm selling a car, here's a car, bye, right? So can you talk through just what that was like in terms of the process, the support around you, how long it took, some of the challenges?
Yeah, I mean, and what you said about it takes longer than you thought. Like, I look back on our initial IM from our very first raise, and I think, oh, we had like within 3 years, we'll be in, 15 different countries internationally. And you just think, oh God, the naivety of it all. So it takes so much longer to get the business to the proof points that you want and the proof points that make sense for an acquisition. And probably at about the 4-year mark, we were receiving quite a few inbound acquisition opportunities. And so we'd softly explored it and decided, no, time wasn't right. And then at around the 6-year mark, we had a very aggressive inbound acquisition opportunity. And that's what really kickstarted the opportunity for us to go and sort of really formally test the market and go, right, okay, what could an acquisition look like? Who's the right partner? What would the right deal look like? And as you say, like, what was the right deal for me? And it's I think one of the most challenging processes I've ever been through, because there's what's right for you as the founder, there's what's right for your shareholder base, and then there's what's right for your team. And those things are not always going to align in an acquisition. There was one bidder in the process who was definitely not going to be the right cultural fit for my team, but may have been the best outcome for myself and our investor base. So it's really about analysing. Some of the deals were part cash, part stock. Some of the deals were, over a 3-year earnout. So there's all of these different moving pieces that you have to evaluate and go, what's the opportunity cost of, me staying in the business versus going on and doing another venture? I had the idea for Hash Gifted, which I'd started working on in the background already. So I knew that I wanted to go and pursue that. So what was the opportunity cost of not being able to go and do that for 3 years if I had to stay full-time in the right fit, versus what's the financial upside that I could get if I stay longer and hit certain KPIs. So it was really, really challenging. And the only person, I had a fantastic mentor, the chairman of my board, from our venture capital partner, who was really great with me and sat down and went through it so many times. Like, the only person that can make this decision is you. It's not something that you can outsource to someone. It's not something that the board can decide for you, because really at the end of the day, it's a personal decision of what deal you're willing to take and what deal is going to be right for you. I was still a majority shareholder. So it was really tough.
Yeah, I was about to ask if you were the majority shareholder, because that kind of helps a lot, because otherwise it's not really up to you anymore. And so just on that point there, how hard was it in terms of the maintaining of the majority shareholding? Like, was that something that was always kind of being, well, not kind of challenged, but like was that something that you had to fight for almost? Because obviously, like everyone just wants more, I guess, like equity. And obviously I think everyone's seen the Social Network movie. So everyone, just doesn't want to be like the Dustin guy who got hustled out. So like, how hard was that part of it? Like, in terms of like, is that something that like kind of, was a challenge for you?
I'd been pretty clear when I started the business. I had the goal of getting it to cash flow positive. And thankfully I did that sort of before COVID and the markets all fell apart. Because I was very clear that there was sort of a period in VC and startups where it was really growth for growth's sake. And, people were raising lots of money at really crazy valuations with no path to profitability. And I would love to say that I was some sort of genius and saw the writing on the wall, but I wasn't. It just gave me a lot of anxiety. And I was like, this does not feel the right way to grow a sustainable company. Like, I feel like I need at some point a path to profitability and some underlying business metrics that make sense. And so I killed myself to get the business to cash flow positive. And so that really allowed me to be master of my own destiny. We'd raised 2 rounds of capital. So obviously there's a dilutive effect in that, but I'd managed to stay majority shareholder because after that, we didn't need to raise any more capital.
That's a good answer. So you made a business that's actually a business, not just an idea to sell. No, it's actually funny, right? Because I've seen this conversation over the years of like, so everyone was going after the multiples and they'd have no revenue streams, right? And then, they'd hope just to sell. And then like, as soon as the VC market just stopped, like a few years ago, everything stopped, right? So the fact that you're a true entrepreneur who wanted a business that actually is a business probably like was a big component of it. So I love that answer. That's a fantastic answer. But so you exited and you had the idea for Hash Gifted, but I'm assuming that there was a period of time after the exit that you took some time off, right? How much time did you take off? And what was your identity like after that? Because I know as entrepreneurs, our identities are often linked to our companies in a big way. So how was that shift, that transition, if you could talk that through?
Oh, God. So the sale process took about 9 months and was incredibly intense. And there was moments where I was like really ready to just down tools and walk away. Like it was so emotionally demanding. And you might have, there were some days where I'd have 6 or 7 management presentations, so presentations to buyers, on top of still being CEO of the company, and you've got to run the business, right? So you're effectively doing 2 full-time jobs for at least a 3 or 4 month period. And so I got to the end of that sale process and I was totally burnt out. And I was like, right, I'm going to take 12 months off. I had a co-founder in Gifted and I was like, right, you're going to run this business. I'd given a big chunk of equity and was like, I got to go. I need 12 months of like not being accountable, not checking my email every day, and just to, take a step back and rediscover myself. And so I wish I could say I honored that plan. I did not.
I was about to say, how was that lasting a year without starting anything?
So I had a couple of board roles as well. So like I had reasons that I had to still be around. And obviously I still own Wink Models. So I had reasons that I still had to sort of be around. But I was, was still working on Gifted and it was pre-launch. And as the business was about to be ready for launch, my business partner was like, I can't do this. It's too stressful. I need out. And I was like, oh God, no, I really needed this talk. So, it was a really tough decision because the business really had the signs of being something that I thought could be a fantastic opportunity and that I was very excited about. And so I thought, do I park it and come back to it in 12 months? Do I just put a bullet in its head and not do it at all? And of course, like the entrepreneur in me was like, no, I'll come back. I'll just, I was living overseas.
It'll be easy. It'll be easy this
exactly.
time.
I'll do exactly. It'll be easy. I'll do 3 months. I'll put in a CEO and, it'd be fine. Anyway, so that was July last year. And here we are. I've been, CEO and running the business since then. And, pleasingly, the business is going incredibly well and, it does have all of the things that I had hoped had happened would happen. So, but it hasn't extracted me from the day-to-day operations and hasn't given me that sabbatical. So look, it's, I think it's the guilty trait of an entrepreneur that you want to get in and get your hands dirty. And it's something I haven't quite learned how to get over just yet.
And I wonder if that's something which you can ever get over. Like I always get asked like, so when are you going to retire? And I'm like, I don't think I can ever retire because I like what I do. It's fun. Like it's hard for me to do other things actually than start businesses or run things or create content or I have so many ideas. And I'm sure this is exactly the same for you where the issue is not, all right, cool, so what am I going to do? Is like, all right, cool, so what am I not going to do? So I can just focus on the things I am going to do. And I've learned the hard way. I'm not quite sure about you, although from your history, there's a question mark, is it's important to focus, right? Because we want to start 100 things, but then there's also the follow through, right? So let me just talk through some kind of entrepreneurial stuff. And then, how important is the domain expertise in starting a business? Because in terms of your history, it's all in the same kind of area. It's adapted in terms of the business model, like as the kind of the times have changed. But how important is actually having the domain expertise, in your opinion?
I think there's some skills that are transferable across industry. So I sit on the board of a few other companies, and none are in this space. And there's, reflecting on the role that I play there, I think there's a lot of skills that are transferable, especially one is in a marketplace business. So there's, really easily transferable skills. So I think there's some skills that are transferable. I think the benefit of having deep domain expertise in an industry is that you really understand the problems of the user. And I think that really gave us an advantage in the right.fit and definitely in Gifted as well. I think if you try and approach an industry cold, it can be very difficult. That said, I know lots of people who have, identified a great business model internationally and gone, I'm going to bring that business to Australia and set up a copycat here, not knowing anything about that particular industry, and had great success. So I think it depends on how adaptable the skill sets are that you have. But I do always think if it's not the founder having a deep domain expertise, having key team members that really understand that just prevent you, I think, from making some really big mistakes that you might not know about.
So what would you say is the important characteristics of a founder that's going to succeed, right? Because, like if I look at your history, right? The doggedness, the grind, the hustle, but also the ability, right? Because I say this so many times, like I think like every week, every day, it doesn't matter how much you want it. It's, are you good enough for it, right? Because everyone wants everything, but are you good enough? And are you learning fast enough, right? And so, so what would you say are the most important things? Like if you were looking at a company just to invest in and you were looking at the founders, right? So what do you look for? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, the thing that I evaluate when I'm investing now, the thing that I evaluate people on is really a few of those things. So adaptability, like do I think that they will be able to recognize and adapt to changing industry market trends, knowing when to pivot the business. Are they good people? And obviously that can be hard to tell from, 3 or 4 initial meetings, but do I think that they have the humbleness, the lack of ego? I think entrepreneurs are a delicate balance, right? Like you need to have enough self-security and ego to go, I can do this and I'm going to go and knock down those doors and I'm not going to be shy in, asking the CEO of this company for a meeting or whatever it might be. But also humble enough to know that you don't know everything and that you are going to have to be guided along the way. Definitely that tenacity and determination. I think one of the things I've recognized in a lot of the portfolios boards that I'm on or portfolios that I've invested in are there's a lot of people who have come from a professional sporting background or have a serious commitment to health and wellness. And I think that, when I look at it, I think it's just that they are consistent in delivering personal results for themselves. They are getting up at 5 a.m, they're going to the gym, and they're willing to make sacrifices and so I think that is like a personality and characteristic trait. So I think there's some common threads there.
I love that one, by the way. Like if I can just jump in on that, the sports analogy or the sports experience is a good one because, I think something happened over the years where people forgot that it's competition, right? And people forgot that it's actually the strongest and the fastest who wins, right? And it doesn't matter how much we care about how good we are and it's a family and all that. It's actually a competition out there. And so sports psychology, they have got to win. It's about the discipline. It's everyday practicing. I love that.
Absolutely. And you're right. There's no participation medals in business. Like you either win and this works or it doesn't. Like, so I think, I think finding people and businesses where, the founding team understands that. And then looking at the dynamic between team members as well, especially if it's a founding duo or 3 or 4 people, just understanding that dynamic, how they plan to work together, what the skill set is, what the cap table looks like as well, because, I'm conscious of being involved in businesses where the founders are already heavily diluted, because I know they're going to have to go and raise 3, 4, 5 rounds of capital. And exactly as you were saying, you don't want a founding team who have got 5% of the business, because it's going to be really, really, really hard. And they're going to go, you know what, this isn't worth it. So, you need a founding team that is still heavily invested.
And so how important is the revenue stream of these investments that you look at, right? Because that's kind of what saved you, right? And that's kind of the psychology which you bring into every business. Is that something that you look for as well? Or are you open to these other kind of, ways, kind of VCs just like, it's all about the market cap and it's not about kind of revenue streams? Like, is that something which you bring to every deal, or is that something that you've learned maybe there's other ways that's not just about the profitability of something?
Yeah, I mainly look for businesses that I think I can make a meaningful impact on. So whether that's the phase of the life cycle that they're in, or whether that's the business model, or whether it's the industry sector. So I think that whilst I'm, not playing an active day-to-day role in any of the businesses, I think that that's when I reflect on my journey and the investors that I brought on, people who were strategic capital and could add more than just putting a check in the bank was so much more valuable to us. And so I want to be that for the portfolio of businesses that I work with.
Understand. And I've got a few more entrepreneurial questions, but I think I will end on those. I want to ask you about Hash Gifted, right? Because Hash Gifted is a combination of, I don't know how many years of all your experience into this thing that is now like a dating app, but for influencers. And it's something that we use at Web Profits as well. So like I was already across the app, and then, we had the conversation. I was like, oh, wow, I already used the app. That's how good is that, right? But if you could just give a quick overview of the app, because I think it's fantastic. And then I think we'll speak about just how content has shifted over the years and why this is kind of how it is at the moment. So if you could just start with a quick overview for anyone who doesn't know Hash Gifted.
Of course. So from a brand's perspective, they can use the Shopify integration or they can just use the platform without it. And essentially they can select products or services that they want to gift to influencers and content creators. So it can be physical products, clothing, makeup, anything like that. Or it can be services, so hotel stays, restaurant visits, hairdressing services. And from the influencer side, exactly as you said, it's like a dating app. So they just swipe left and right through products and services that they would like to be gifted in exchange for doing something. So whether it's content creation or sharing content on their socials or leaving reviews. And the whole idea came from, TRF was a marketplace. So we charged a commission on every single transaction through the marketplace. But there were so many brands who had really awesome products and services that they were willing to gift in exchange for content and working with influencers. But that didn't work in a marketplace business, right? Like we had to charge a commission. So we can't charge 15% of a pair of shoes. And so I could think there was an opportunity there. And then on the flip side, I'm a micro creator myself, and I would receive so many unsolicited gifts to the office. And I felt so guilty because I thought, all of these businesses have invested so much money in these beautiful send outs. Maybe I've got a competing makeup deal and I can't post about this product, or this isn't really my size or style. I don't really want it. I thought there's got to be a better way. Why can't we just build something that allows influencers to opt into what they want to receive? And that means that brands are connecting with people who authentically, genuinely want to try those products, and sort of democratizing that content creation piece, because getting really great UGC is super hard. It's a ideal scenario that you would have these magical customers online who are making great video testimonials for you and sharing them and tagging you. And it just obviously doesn't happen. So I wanted to make that something that was viable for businesses to be able to do, and recognizing that, the industry and landscape had really changed from working with these big macro creators, where there was very obvious brand endorsement, through to consumers, becoming much more savvy and much more aware as the life cycle of social media changed, to going, okay, I want to see people who are like me. I want to find people that I really trust online, and I'm heavily influenced by micro creators in particular niches. And so I wanted to be able to, and that's really hard for a brand to find and identify. If you're looking for vegan mummy bloggers on the Northern Beaches, like how are you going to find that? It's really hard. So I wanted to be able to help brands be able to unlock that at scale. So that was where the idea for Hash Gifted came from. And
you mentioned that it applies across all kinds of businesses. It's not just e-commerce, which is it kind of seems to tend to go into e-commerce because I send a product, but then you said hotel stays or services. So how does that part work?
Yeah, so you can list anything on the platform. So we've got loads of restaurants, loads of Accor hotels, Solartel Group, QT hotels, loads of service, but hair salons, beauty salons, nail salons.
Marketplace, right? So it's just a marketplace. So they upload it
and have an SEO. Two-sided. Yeah, we've even got an SEO provider who is offering SEO services to influencers who have their own small business or their own blog and want SEO services. So can really be just about anything at the moment.
And just, I don't know if it's something just to show on the podcast, but in terms of the pricing, is it like a subscription? Is it expensive? Because I know a lot of times everything's expensive, right? So is it expensive? Is it affordable? Is it comparative?
Yeah, no. Yeah, absolutely. So it's a monthly subscription to the brand side. It's completely free for influencers to join and receive gifts and apply and everything like that. We vet every single influencer. we turn down about 80%. So they have to be fully vetted influencers. On the brand side, it's a subscription fee. Our starter plan starts at $99 a month.
Oh, cheap. That's cheap, everyone. Everyone who wants content, that's the cheapest thing ever. Sign up now. I know how much content costs out there, thousands and thousands of dollars for just a few videos. So $100 a month. Yeah. Sign up. Yep.
And then our most expensive plan is $349 a month. So it is still wildly affordable. And yeah, the most expensive plan also includes all of your content licensing. So if you want to use that content for paid media, advertising, anything like that, it's all included. So we just tried to make, and you can cancel anytime. It's month by month subscription. So I said, like Netflix, if you're not using it, just cancel it. So we tried to make it really affordable because, as you said, there's so many tools out there that have got, they're $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month. They're really time consuming and cumbersome just to even learn how to use them in the influencer space. And you're like, oh God, now I've got these fancy AI identification tools. And like, most businesses don't need it. Most businesses can't afford to be investing that much in sort of social content, influencer marketing, digital content. So I just wanted to make it easy, fast, efficient.
So what's interesting is that you seem to be hitting all of the trends. So you launched the Right Fit back when influence was a thing, and then you exited. And then you've launched this one now where kind of influencers are still good, but, so we run like e-commerce agency and, we do a lot of content for Meta and TikTok, right? And it's the micro influencers who you've never heard of before. It's just some person at home, a random person who just makes a good video, right? Yeah. And then it's about always experimenting with like a lot of different assets, a lot of different angles, different hooks and stuff like that. But it's all about this, the nano influencer or the micro influencer, where they might not even be an influencer, but they make content for you, right? And so how do you keep hitting these trends well, because it's like you just went, oh, here you go. And everyone's like, wow, you're so lucky. Oh my God, you just managed to do it. It's like luck. Damn you, it's not luck.
Wish I could say there was some like amazing, analysis process I go through to determine like, where industry sectors are or gaps in the market. It's really like I sort of saw this opportunity and I thought, oh, I could build something like really cool. And again, in my head, I was like, it's going to be really small, like 1-page application, but it's turned into, again, this bigger than Ben-Hur thing. But I think it was just a process of constantly hearing from both sides the pain points, from influencers that I knew who were sick of receiving unsolicited gifts or who were reaching out to me saying, hey, do you know the contact person at, this clothing brand or at this, because I want to get in touch with them about getting some product for my my trip to Bali or whatever. And so I was like, okay, there's a pain point on that side, pain point on the brand side. I'll just build something quick to solve that, not expecting it to turn into a whole nother business. So.
Okay. So basically I think that's a really good point, right? I think the benefit of being such a dogged entrepreneur who's just basically in the business, who's there and who wants to listen is that you're listening. And when you listen, and if you're doing all the work all the time, there's a certain kind of a pace that happens. And it's like ideas happen, just when there's stuff happening, right? So the more things that are happening, and if you're listening and if you're always open and humble, right, you can evolve, right? And I think the word which you said before, I think adaptable. I think that you've got a combination of adaptability and speed of execution and ability, obviously, right? And I think that has led to, this thing where you seem to just have success after success after success at a high level. I mean, I'm sure no one can see the grind.
Exactly.
The grind is hidden from everyone. It's not on Instagram. It's not on TikTok. It's just hidden from everyone. But, I'd say at the 30,000 foot view, it looks like a very planned, successful career, right? In kind of entrepreneurship.
A very neat trajectory. No, yes. And there's obviously all the twists and turns along the way. But and I think one of the whole listening piece, I think, was so important for me. And, my team, I used to do customer service on the weekend in the Right Fit, which was insane. But I loved it because it meant I got to hear the pain points of customers. And for the first 2 or 3 years, I did the first hour and last hour of customer service every single weekday as well, because I just wanted to know and be across like obviously, one, what were the pain points in our business? Were people experiencing bugs or having challenges or not liking things? But also, what sort of things were they asking, and what sort of signals was I getting from the market that there might be other opportunities, whether it was within that business or looking for another business? And so I think listening and being aware, and also, spending so much time in the industry, asking for help, meeting. I was very conscious. I would always keep Friday morning, 8 a.m. I would have an industry meeting. I would reach out to someone on LinkedIn. Can we have a coffee? Someone I admired, someone from an adjacent sector or whatever, to really try and keep abreast of what else was going on in the industry. So yeah, I think listening and trying to be aware and stepping out of your sort of maybe the bubble that you put yourself in to execute your own business, so important.
Yeah, this is something I learned a few years into my first kind of businesses, was that because I used to really like hate talking to customers because I was a bit kind of like, because I had, what's it called? What's that syndrome? Imposter syndrome, syndrome, right? So I was doing everything I could to not talk to a customer because I wasn't sure what to say, how to say it.
Yeah.
And when I started talking to customers because I just had to, I was like, oh, I understand. You want to talk to your customers. You want to talk to the market, because when you talk, you listen as well, right?
Yeah.
And then that's where you hear all the good stuff. And as the founder, as the entrepreneur or whatever, you can change things and you can adapt things. And maybe that was the idea that, that was the thing I was missing. I just heard the pain point, or I'm on customer service, so I heard 6 people say the same thing. Okay, I should focus on this. You know what I mean? So I love that. It's
invaluable. And I think, as amazing as your team might be, they'll never connect the dots, I think, in the way the founder will. So I think, they can definitely go and build a new button or whatever, but they won't see that opportunity of like, oh, wow, we could build a whole nother section in this platform, or we could build a whole nother business arm here.
It's the innovation that happens as a result of those conversations. I think that's where it's all at. Now, one final question. In terms of the mentorship side of things, and this is something I think that you mentioned at the very start about how you outreached, you asked for help. If they asked something, so you just basically just executed everything. And then you went back to like, hey, all right, cool. So I've done that. Now, could I do something else? Right now, I've mentored a few people over the years, and I like the people who do what you did, right? I think, like in terms of mentorship, I think everyone actually just wants something off the person, but they don't understand how it is just for the mentor and what they want to see, right? And so what do you want to see? Because I think it is good to kind of state it out loud. So if someone's listening and they want to speak to you or whatever, they know, all right, this is the expectation at least. Yeah, you can contact me, but make sure these things happen, right? Yes. How do you think about it?
And I couldn't agree more. I think so many people go, oh, how do I get a mentor? And I want a mentor. And you're like, okay, what do you want a mentor for? And they're like, oh, because I don't really know what I want to do with my life, or I'm thinking about starting a business. And you're like, well, no one person can help you with that. So once you know exactly what it is that you need this person for, okay, then you've got a very, very specific list of things that you're going to need. Like, I want to start a fintech business. One of my first mentors was a CIO, CTO, and I had gone to him because I was like, I need to build a payment gateway. I've narrowed it down to these 3 different payment gateways. I've done the analysis. I've done the research. I know the different costs. Could you please tell me why your business decided to go with this particular payment gateway? What is it that I'm missing? And so it's something very tangible and practical that person can help you with, a 15-minute call or coffee or whatever. And then from there, you see what that personal dynamic is like. Is this someone that I could work with? Did I find that? Did they find that enjoyable? Did I find that enjoyable? Is there an appetite here to, turn this into something more? And the only time I think it's beneficial for a mentor is when they see someone who is willing to execute, willing to follow their advice, who follows up, and they go, okay, I've given you this an hour of my day over coffee. I've given you some insights, some advice, some of my key learnings. And then the number of times I just never hear from someone after that. I don't know if you've had the same thing. I would always, with my mentors, follow up with a handwritten thank you note, check in 6 weeks' time with an update of what I had done, what I hadn't done, where I was blocked. Follow up again, ask for another coffee meeting. Here's what I've done. Here's what the blockers are, an update on the business. I had a personal CRM of people that I would meet up with once a week, once a fortnight, once a month, once a quarter, once a year. And I would make sure I'd keep them warm, update them on the business. So it really is, it's it's, you know, it's a formal process. And I think treating it as such and treating that person with the respect that, you know, their time is valuable and worth, I think is so enjoyable then for any person mentoring someone.
That's what I was about to say.
God, I'm so invested in your journey.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. I think just for everyone who wants a mentor as well, is that, you know, mentors actually like being a mentor because, you know, they want to support a fresh entrepreneur, assuming that entrepreneur is going to put in the work, and they look for speed, execution, and just doing what you say on time and then following up, right? You know, there's so many people who want it, but there's not many people who will put in the work and that have the discipline to follow through. And so I think, you know, if you're going to outreach and if you're going to ask her, you know, just to become like a mentor, just ask yourself first, like, having basically heard everything in this podcast, like, are you the kind of person that she'll respond to? And are you specific enough with what you want? And you know what I mean? Like, I think these are really, really important parts, but I do think that there's a lot of potential for mentorship out there, right? It's just, you have to, you know, just do the majority of the work and show that you are worthy of the mentorship, I guess, in a way. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I think, you know, I'm always very clear with people, like for 6 years of growing The Right Fit, I didn't have a holiday. I worked every single weekend. I worked probably 12 or 14-hour days. Everything else came second. And that's, you know, the cost of doing business, you know. And I think if you're willing to make that sacrifice because you believe in building something better, obviously that's probably incredibly frowned upon saying that these days, and that you're supposed to have some sort of work-life balance and mental health and blah, blah, blah. But you know,
that's all lies. That's all lies. And those are the people that are not succeeding. I tell you, because all the entrepreneurs I know they're just working all the time.
Yeah, breaking their back. And, you know, and that's what it had to be for me. I mean, maybe there's people who are smarter than me and can do it in less time and whatever, but my journey was breaking my back, putting in every single hour, every single, you know, that I could get my hands on, and all of the resources and all of the favors and begging, borrowing, stealing. And so I think being because there's also no shame in being an entrepreneur, working within your organization and having, you know, great ideas and being part of, you don't have to go and start your own thing. And if you're, you know, if you want to do that, then just be very realistic with yourself that there is a very real opportunity cost. You know, it will come at the cost of relationships, of holidays, of sometimes your health. You know, that is what it is. And
all of the above and more and
yes,
more and more. And this is why I started off by asking, is entrepreneurship something that can be taught, or is it just inbuilt? Because the amount of sacrifice and pain that someone has to go through is significant, you know, it's significant, you know. So just like, and it's also not something that you choose. It's like, you can't help but do it. It's not like, I kind of like always like to kind of explain it like in that you can't stop an entrepreneur. I lost my train of thought now. Anyway, look, I'm so conscious of time. I was hoping that this would be kind of 30, 40 minutes, but you're just so awesome and there's so much to talk about. So it's taken a bit longer. How do people get in touch with you?
Yes, they can email me, Taryn@hashgifted.com, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's just Taryn Williams, or on Insta. Again, it's just @Taryn Williams.
And Hashgifted, you should just be signing up. It's only $100 a month. Like, you know, we spend tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars on content every month, you know, just for our agency. So we know how much and how hard it is. And if you want a good way of just getting some good content, and it's a very cost-effective way, sign up, $100 a month. It's a great start, and then just take it from there. But Taryn, thank you so much. I'm sorry about that last part where the doorbell rang, but I guess it's going to make us actually stop 7 minutes over. But thank you so much. It's been such a great conversation. I'm so happy for all your success. Everyone, just listen to every single thing that she said. Like, if you're actually just thinking about kind of entrepreneurship, because it's a journey, you know, and I think that you've had a fantastic journey from what I can see.
Thank you so much. I loved our chat.
Thanks for listening to the Growth Manifesto podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. For more episodes, please visit growthmanifesto.com/podcast. And if you need help driving growth for your company, please get in touch with us at webprofits.io.